திருச்சிற்றம்பலம். புழியர்கோன் வெப்பொழித்த புகழியர்கோன் கடல் போற்றி, ஆழிமிசை கல்மிதப்பில் அணைந்த பிரான் அடி போற்றி, வாழி திரு நாவலூர் வன்றொண்டர் பதம் போற்றி, ஊழிமலி திருவாதூரர் திருத்தாள் போற்றி. திருச்சிற்றம்பலம். So today we are going to start discussing the stories in the 5th verse. Last week we had seen the verse Vambara varivandu manamnara malarum madumalar kondrayan adiyalal peyana embiran sambandan adiyarkum adiyen ஏர்கோன் கலிக்காமன் அடியார்க்கும் அடியேன் நம்பிரான் திருமூலன் அடியார்க்கும் அடியேன் நாட்டமிகு தண்டிக்கும் மூர்க்கர்க்கும் அடியேன் அம்பரான் சோமாசி மாறனுக்கும் அடியேன் ஆரூரன் ஆரூரில் அம்மானுக்கு ஆளே. So there was the 5th verse in the tiruttoṇḍattogai. So in this verse, as I was mentioning last time when we met, the first 1.5 lines, Vambara varivandu manamnara malarum madumalar nar kondrayan adiyalal peyana embiran sambandan adiyarkum adiyen. So that is describing thirugnāna sambandar and says, I am his devotee's devotee, or I am his servant's servant, that kind of a person. And we talked about the fact that Sambandar, he never worshipped anything except Shiva's holy feet, and that's what that line meant. Thirugnāna Sambandar, who is my master, who never worshipped any lord except Shiva's holy feet, and that Shiva is wearing fragrant kondrai flower garlands that attracts a lot of bees. That's the meaning of that first line and a half. So Thirugnāna Sambandar is, as we know, is listed as the first of the 4 Shaiva saints or Shaiva Acharyas. As you recall in the opening, the verse that I recite is worshipping the holy feet of the 4 saints. Puzhiyargon veppozhitha pugaliyargon kadal potri. That line refers to Sambandar. I worship the holy feet of Thirugnāna Sambandar, who cured the Pandya king of his fever. That's the meaning of the line. And that is an episode that we'll see in Sambandar's life history. So now let's go back to the story. So Thirugnāna Sambandar was born somewhere around 600, 610, something in that area, in that region of the Common Era, right? So roughly you can say Thirugnāna Sambandar lived about 1400 to 1450 years before our time, today's time. And in those days, the dominant religions in India were Buddhism and Jainism. As we know, the Hinduism was there, the Vedic religion, and then as a reformist movement, Buddhism and Jainism came about 500 years before the Common Era. So Jainism and Buddhism started about 2500 years ago from this point in time. And over the next 1000 years, those 2 movements, religions, expanded broad and wide. They expanded broadly within India. They also expanded outside India. The Jainism was widespread in India. Buddhism was widespread in India, as well as it went outside India into Tibet and China and Southeast Asia, Sri Lanka, other places. And so over a period of time, a lot of people in India had become followers of these 2 reformist religions. And over a period of time, the religions also, these reformist religions also got corrupted. They had become they spread wide and far, and they also became the royal religions. So they got a royal patronage in different places. So in the south we have a lot of Jain influence, and that's why even if you look at places like in Karnataka, you have places like Shravana-Belagola, where we have this huge statue of Tirthankara, like that. So the Jainism was widespread in the south, and the Pallava kings had become Jains, the Pandya king had become a Jain, the Karnataka kings had become Jains, so it was all widespread. And the Shaiva worship was very few, on the decline, and Thirugnāna Sambandar's father, his name is referred to as Sivapada Hridayar, and he was looking at the situation and saying he was doing effectively, he was doing tapas kind of a prayer, right? He was sincerely praying for a son, and he wanted a son who could revive these things. And after some time he was blessed with a son, so he was so happy. And he was a normal child. Sambandar was a normal child, as you can expect, right? And then when he was about he was born in Sirgari. Sirgari is a village or a town that's about 20 kilometers or 20-25 kilometers south from Chidambaram. So if you have been to Chidambaram, you go further south from Chidambaram, and there is a Kolladam river. You cross the Kolladam river and then go for another 5-6 kilometers, and you will come to Sirgari. And Sirgari is a very ancient pilgrim center, and it has a lot of legends of what things happened there. And in fact, Sirgari is known to have 12 names. I don't know whether I talked about that when we discussed Thodudi Saviyan Padhigam, but it has 12 names. Sirgari comes from the word Kari, that is one of the names, and Brahmapuram is another name that we saw in the Thodudi Saviyan. If you remember that song, we say Thodudi Saviyan Vidayeri Orthu Madisudi Kadode Sodalai Podi Pusi in Udlangavar Kalvan Yeduடைய Malaran Munainar Panindetha Arul Seida Piyuduடைய Piramapuram Meviya Pemanavan. The Piramapuram is Brahmapuram. Similarly, it has other names like Venupuram, Pugali, Venguru, Thonipuram, Pundarai, Shirapuram, Puravam, Sanbai Nagar, Kochayam, Karumalam. So these are all the 12 names of that place. It is maybe a little bit unusual, but we know that ancient towns tend to have 2 or 3 names associated with different legends. So Madurai, even though we call it Madurai, if you go back to the literature, it will be called Kudal Nagar, or it may be referred to as Alavai. Like that, places have multiple names, and Sirgari has 12 names. Anyway, I'm mentioning it so that we know that it is a very important kshetra. And Sivapada Hridayar, we know that he was a Brahmin, and he hails from the Gotram called Kaundinya Gotram. How do we know this? Sambandar, in his songs, later on he sings, I am of this Kaundinya Gotram. So that's how we know. So Sivapada Hridayar, with a Kaundinya Gotram heritage, he was praying to Shiva for a son who will help revive Hinduism. And when he got the son, he was so happy. He was the only child, and they obviously, you can imagine how well they would have taken care of a child who is born after a long time. So he is very cherished, and they took, they were extremely fond and all that. So he was growing up. So when he was around 3 years old, one day his father was going to the temple tank. Sirgadi has a temple, and outside the temple we have a temple tank, which is a big pool where the devotees bathe and do all those things. So his father was going to go to the temple tank to have his morning bath and to do morning prayers. So Sambandar, who was a 3 years old child, he said he also wanted to go along with his father. Father said, okay, come along. So he went with his father to the temple tank. Father made him sit on the banks, on the top of the steps, and said, be here, don't run anywhere, be here, be a good boy, be here quietly. I will take my bath and come back. So father gets into the tank, and then he takes his bath, and then as part of his morning puja, when you are in the people do Sandhya Vandanam standing in water and do all that, right? Like that, he was doing some worship while he was standing in the water, and there is a special prayer that's called Ahamarsanam, and that he says when he was immersed in the water. So he dunked inside the water, and he was doing Ahamarshana Stotram Puja. And Sambandar was sitting on the steps, and he was looking at his father, and suddenly the father went inside the water, and he didn't come out. Father didn't come out, and so he wasn't sure what's going on. So he started crying. Oh mother, oh father. He started crying. And then instead of looking at the water and crying, he looked around and looked at the temple tower, and he started crying, oh mother, oh father, amme appa. Then at that moment, Shiva and Parvati appear, and Shiva tells Parvati, give him your milk. And then she takes a golden cup, takes her breast milk, and keeps Sambandar on her lap, feeds him that milk. And that milk, as we know, it's a divine milk. So as soon as Sambandar drank that milk, he got all the knowledge that is there to be got. So Sekar says at that instant he received all the knowledge, both the Aparajnanam and Parajnanam. So as we know, the Aparajnanam is material world, right? All other things about the knowledge of all the things. And the Parajnanam is knowledge of the divine. So he got all the material knowledge and he got all the spiritual knowledge. So he got the complete knowledge, and he was so happy, ecstatic, right? When you are in that kind of a state of bliss, you're so entranced in that. And after some time, the father finishes his things and comes out and finds that his son has got this strange look in his face, and he can see milk flowing down his cheeks. And the father was shocked, because first they are Brahmin, so they have a more charam, so they don't eat anything anywhere. They have more restrictions. That's one part. But more important is that he's a special child. He's their only child, and he's drank milk and he doesn't see anybody around. He looks around, he doesn't see anybody. So he's worried, We don't know who came and gave what milk to him. We don't know what will happen to him. So he asks the child, oh Sambandar, who gave you the milk? Sambandar was, he was still in a blissful state. He was not reacting. So the father picks up a twig that is lying nearby, picks up the twig, and as if he was going to hit him, he raises his hand and says, oh Sambandar, tell me, who gave you the milk? And at that instant, Sambandar shows his hand, points with his finger to something, and his father looks there and there's nothing. Right? If father says, what are you showing? Who? He says they. He says who? And then Sambandar started singing. The first song that we have seen, the Thodudai Sevin that I saw. So that 1.1 padhigam, he started singing. Thodudai Seviyan Vidayeri or Thuvan Madisudi Kadudaya Sudalai Podipusi Yen Ullam Kavarkalvan Yedudaya Malaran Munainat Panindetha Aruseida Pududaya Piramapuram Mevi Pemman even Andre. So Sambandar is able to see Lord Shiva and Parvati. His father cannot see them. So Sambandar is describing Shiva to his father. Oh father, Shiva is the one who gave me the milk. And in the song, first song 1.1, he is describing the attributes of Shiva. Thodudaya Seviyan means he is Ardhanarishwara. Thodudaya Sevin, Vidayeri is a Vrishabhavahana. Or Thuvan Madisudi is Chandrasekhara. Kadudaya Sudalai Podipusi. He is wearing the holy ash from the cremation grounds. Yen Ullam Kavarkalvan, the thief who stole my heart. That is the phrase that Sambandar uses in his first song. The thief, he is the thief who stole my heart. And then he says, when Yedudaya Malaran Munainat Panindetha Arul Seida Pududaya Piramapuram. So this Brahmapuram, which is one of the 12 names of the Sirgari, Brahmapuram, which got the name because Brahma worshipped Shiva once upon a time in that Salam and got boons or got his problem solved. So he says, the Salam where Brahma worshipped and received Shiva's grace, that Brahmapuram, the Shiva who dwells in that Brahmapuram, it is him indeed who gave me the milk. And the way, in Tamil, the words, right? Him, we have he, in English there is only one he, but in Tamil and other Indian languages, for example Telugu, we have somebody who is close by, somebody who is far away. Right? We have, Avan is somebody who is far away, Even is somebody who is nearby. Like R, E, those are the prefixes that we will use. So he says even means somebody is still able to see the Lord Shiva and Parvati next to him, nearby. And he is telling his father, oh father, it is him, it is Shiva, this Shiva who is here, he is the one who gave me the milk. And his father, you can imagine what would have been his reaction, right? The child, 3-year-old child, we know what kind of language the child will speak, right? It will be burning, it will be speaking basic languages, and it will have, limited vocabulary, limited sentence skills, and all that, right? We know. Here, the child that who he was with 10 minutes ago, and the child which is there now, they are totally different child. They are totally different, because that child could not say any of these words. And this is high-sounding Tamil, poetry, musical, everything. So at that instant, his father realized that his son, Sambandar, had received Shiva's grace. He was so thrilled. Like this was his prayer, that he wanted a son who will be a special child who will revive the Hinduism. And now he knows Lord Shiva had listened to his prayers and he had given him a son. And Lord Shiva has come and blessed that son. So he was so thrilled. And from that day onwards, thirugnAna Sambandar was singing songs all the time, right? Every time he goes to a temple, he will sing songs. So his padhigams are so many. And anyway, so we'll come back to those padhigams. So some father takes sambandar, carries him into the temple. If sambandar finishes the padhigam, they go home. He sings another padhigam too when he was in the temple. And then they go home, and the whole town is celebrating this, because you can imagine, though, the 1400 years ago, village life, everybody knows everybody else in the village, and here is a child that they all knew, and this child suddenly is singing these wonderful stotrams. So the whole town is celebrating, and next day Sambandar wanted to go to the nearby temple. So about less than 2 kilometers from Sirgari, there is another village called ThirugnAna. So Sambandar's father, Sivapada Hridayar, takes him to that temple. And because he was a child, right, 3-year-old child, it cannot walk 2 kilometers, so he will carry him. He carried him there, and then he was standing in front of the Shiva there in the Sannidhi, and he started singing another padhigam. And this padhigam is in the collection. It is 1.23. We haven't seen this. It is called thevaram Paya. So that padhigam he started singing, and as he was singing, when you are singing, you have to keep time, so that So if you have a thalam, you will be putting the thalam, but he was singing, so he was using his hands to clap and count that beat. So he was singing with using his hands to keep time. And Shiva could not tolerate his dear child's palms getting red because of this thalam. So immediately, with Shiva's grace, a pair of golden thalams come into his hand, Sambandar's hand, and the Panchakshara mantram is embossed in those thalams. And you know how the thalams are, right? The thalam is the hand symbols that we use when you are singing, and that they are made with bronze, because that's the bronze is the one that will give nice sound. But Sambandar got golden thalams, and as you may know, the gold does not make nice sound. Gold is very beautiful, very highly valuable, and all that is there. But the sound that comes from gold is not the same as the sound you will get from bronze. But because it was a divine thalam that was given to Sambandar by Shiva, it could make wonderful sound. So he sings that padhigam, finishes the padhigam using the thalam that Shiva gave him. And that thalam he had throughout his life, wherever he went. And that's why, if you see any painting of the thirugnAna Sambandar, he will be shown as a child, a boy, and he will be shown with the thalam in his hand. And then they come back home. So after some time, his mother must have said, yeah, was there a question? Okay. So after some time, they go on a trip to a place called Tirunanipalli. Tirunanipalli is a village maybe about, let's say, 30-40 kilometers from Sirgari, further southeast. And that is the town of his maternal uncle. His mother's side, they hail from Tirunanipalli. So as soon as everybody heard that this child, she and Shiva, and his blessed child and all that, so he wanted to go, and his uncles wanted to see him, whatever. So his father takes him on a pilgrimage trip to Tirunanipalli. So because it is about 30-40 kilometers, so Sambandar was sitting on father's shoulders and they were walking. And as they neared Tirunelveli, he could see the Gopuram from maybe 1 kilometer away or 2 kilometers away, something like that. And then they say that is a Tirunelveli Gopuram. So Sambandar sings from that point onwards a wonderful padhigam called Karaigal Kugai Mullai. It's in I think it is 2.84. Let me check. I shouldn't make a mistake there. So the Karaigal Kugai Mullai is the padhigam that he sings, and 2.84. And in that final song, Sambandar always sings the signature song, the Palavruti kind of song, in which he will say, this song is sung in praise of the Lord of this town or this thalam, sung by thirugnAna Sambandan, hailing from Sirgari, and those who recite this padhigam will get this benefit. So that is the 11th song of all his padhigams. In that way, in this padhigam, he records that, he mentions, I am Sambandar from Sirgari and sung this padhigam on Tirunelveli, and those who sing this padhigam will get this benefit. All that he says, but he mentions one important statement. Attar piyalmel irundu idnisayal uraitha panuval. Attar means father. Piyal means on the shoulder, back of the neck, right? So his father was carrying him on his shoulder. You know how child will be sitting on father's shoulder, right? Sitting on the back, putting one leg on one side, putting the other leg on the other side, holding onto the head, kind of a thing. See, that's how Sambandar was carried. And Sambandar says, I sang this padhigam sitting on my father. He mentions it, sitting on my father's nape, father's shoulders. Attar piyalmel irundu innisayal uraitha panuval. So what we can see from that is that Sambandar records a lot of facts, historical facts in his padhigams. The facts like this, that he was sitting on father's shoulders, that is recorded in this song. Like that, Sambandar mentions those things. So he say they do that, then they come back to Sirgari and they are staying there. And now you know that this kind of news, right, will spread far and wide. That there is this child who was fed milk by Parvati and he is singing songs and wonderful Tamil and beautiful poetry, beautiful prayers, beautiful stotrams, very musical. The news spread to a lot of people. And there was a musician called Tirunilakanda Yalpanar and his wife Matanga Cholamani. So they are from a Panar, means the group of people who specialize in music, like the musicians of those days. They are Panars. So those two people, they want to come and see Sambandar. So they come to Sirgari and they fall at the feet of Sambandar, and then they hear him sing the padhigams and they are so happy to hear it. And so the Tirunilakanda Yalpanar requests Sambandar that he wanted to accompany thirugnAna Sambandar when he is singing his padhigams. Yaar is the musical instrument equivalent to the Veena. Right? Veena is the word that we use today, but in olden days that is called yaar in Tamil. So there are different kinds of yaar. I don't know which kind he played, but he played yaar. So he said that I wanted to sing accompany your padhigams with my yaar. Sambandar agrees. And we have to remember one thing in those days, right? Sambandar is from a Kaundinya Gotram, he is from a Brahmin family, and Tirunilakanda Yalpanar is from a Pana family, right? the Panargal, the musicians in those days, they belong to the Pana caste, and the Pana caste is, in those days, it was considered on the lowest level of the caste system. So they were probably considered untouchables. But Sambandar, he saw him as a Shiva devotee, and there was absolutely no caste difference for him. So Thirunilakanda Yalpanar, we will see later in this Tiruttoṇḍattogai, is one of the 63 nayanmars. So Sambandar agreed and had Thirunilakanda Yalpanar and his wife accompany him wherever he went. Whenever he sang padhigam, they will be with him. They will be playing accompanying music. And that's how they were doing some kshetrarnam. And then at this time, Tirunavukkarasar, he was a contemporary of Thirugnāna Sambandar. So Tirunavukkarasar heard about this divine child in Sirgari. So he comes to Sirgari to meet the child. And he comes, meets the child. Tirunavukkarasar, remember, Tirunavukkarasar was probably 70 years old at the time. Thirugnāna Sambandar was 3 or 4 years old at the time. So Tirunavukkarasar falls at the feet of Thirugnāna Sambandar. Thirugnāna Sambandar falls at the feet of Tirunavukkarasar. And Thirugnāna Sambandar calls him Appare. We saw this in the story of Tirunavukkarasar. Appar means father with respect. Right? Respectful addressing of father is Appare. Appa is commonly used. Appan is singular. Appar is plural with respect. So Thirugnāna Sambandar calls Tirunavukkarasar as O Father. And from that day onwards, Tirunavukkarasar also gets a name Appar. And then Tirunavukkarasar goes, after some time, he goes away. So Thirugnāna Sambandar, then in another pilgrimage tour, he goes to Chidambaram, and then he goes to other stalams, and he goes to a stalam called near Vridachalam. There's a stalam called Nelvāil Arathurai. So he is walking along. So by this time, Thirugnāna Sambandar is probably 4.5 or 5 years old. He is growing up, right? So his father was carrying him before, but he is becoming, Sambandar is becoming, growing up, so he is becoming heavier, so his father is not able to carry him that much. But so Sambandar started walking as far as possible. So as he was walking to Nelvāil Arathurai temple, Shiva could not stand to see his dear child walk in hot sun, right? So that evening he makes a special palanquin, and kudai. Kudai is like the umbrella, the ceremonial umbrella, and then the chinnam is like a horn. So he keeps all those things in the temple in Nelvāil Arathurai, and then goes in the dreams of the priests of the temple, tells them that I have kept these things in the temple for Thirugnāna Sambandar. You all of you take them to Thirugnāna Sambandar and give it to him. And in Thirugnāna Sambandar's dream, Shiva also makes him aware that I have given these things for you for your use. So next day morning, the priests go to the temple and they find this palanquin, and they find this umbrella, they find this horn, everything. So they are so happy, so they carry those things and come to Thirugnāna Sambandar, who was a couple of kilometers away, in the next village or a couple of villages away. they bring them to thirugnAna sambandar and deliver to him. ThirugnAna sambandar looks at it as Shiva's blessings, and then he goes around the palanquin, utters the holy mantra Namah Shivaya, and then he sings one wonderful padhigam. And then, he says, this is Shiva's grace. And then he gets into the palanquin, and then his other devotees carry the palanquin. So from that day onwards, thirugnAna sambandar was always carried in a palanquin. In those days, only the royals will be carried in those kind of palanquins. So thirugnAna sambandar was Divine Prince, so he was carried in the palanquin. And again, as the royal, symbols, right? Royal emblems. They will blow the horn and all that, right? When the king visits. Like that, for him, he had this horns, so the devotees will be blowing the horns as he was going along. So like that, he was given the royal treatment by Shiva. And in fact, this is one of the reasons that Shiva gave all these things to Sambandar, which is one of the reasons why Sambandar is listed as the first Acharya in the list of Acharyas. If you remember, Tirunavukarasar and thirugnAna sambandar were contemporaries, right? They lived in the same time. But Tirunavukarasar was much older. And Tirunavukarasar was singing thevaram for a couple of years before Sambandar started singing thevaram. So Tirunavukarasar is older and the first one to sing. But in terms of the sequencing, Sambandar is given the first position because of his greatness. And then, he goes to other salams and they return back to Sirgari. So whenever they go on a pilgrimage tour, they may go for a month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever is the duration. And they will return back to Sirgari, where they spend the rest of the time. So, and as when they go on this pilgrimage tours, they were walking and they will be carried in a palanquin, and they will go stay in one salam for a few days. They will establish camp, they will stay in a chatram there, and they will stay for a few days, and then they will go to the next salam. That's how they will be doing. Not like us in these days, when we go to visit India, we want to go see pilgrim temple tours. We get into a car, and then in the morning 3 hours we see 5 temples. Afternoon 3 hours we see 4 temples. But in those days they spent time, they stayed in each place and spent a few days at least, maybe longer. Anyway, so Sambandar returns to Sirgari. He was staying in Sirgari for a while, and at that time he was entering the 7th year of age, right? So because he was a Brahmin heritage, they had this sacred ceremony, Upanayanam. So as part of the Upanayanam, they do the puja, they do the Veda mantras, they do homam, all those things, they do rituals, and then they put the sacred tirana on him, and then they do the formal initiation into Vedic learning. Right? That's when they do the Gayatri Mantra Upadesam, and then they formally initiate the child into learning Vedas. But in Sambandar's case, there was nothing for him to learn because he had already knows everything. But still they do the process. So they do the Upanayanam, and then they do the Gayatri Mantra Upadesam and all that. And after all that is done, you can imagine how many Vedic Pandits would have come, how many priests would have been there in those days in that kind of a place. And then because there was a big gathering of Vedic Pandits, they had their doubts clarified by Sambandar. people will have doubt. They have learned so many shastras, and everybody, when you learn shastras, you will have some doubt here, something here, maybe some phrase is not clear there, or maybe this shastram says this concept, but that work says that concept. They seem to be contradictory. So they would have had all kinds of doubts in the educated, learned minds. So the pandits who were there sought their doubts to be clarified by Sambandar, and Sambandar clarified their doubts. And then Sambandar sang one very important padhigam, 3.22. Tunjalam tunjal ilada poidinum. We have covered this padhigam in our sessions before, and in that second song he says a wonderful thing. Mandiram nanmarayagi vanavar sindayul nindru avarthammai alvana செந்தழல் ஓம்பிய செம்மை வேதியர்க்கு அந்தியுள் மந்திரம் அஞ்செழுத்துமே. Right? செந்தழல் ஓம்பிய செம்மை வேதியர்க்கு. Vediyar is the Brahmanas. செந்தழல் ஓம்பிய means the Brahmanas who do Agnihotram. Those who do fire worship, to those Brahmanas, Antiyul Mandiram Anjeluttume. The mantram that they do japam during Sandhya times is Panchakshara. We know that the mantram that is chanted during Sandhya time is Gayatri mantram. And Sambandar is saying here, the mantram that the Brahmanas meditate on during Sandhya times is Panchakshara, Namah Shivaya mantram. So what that means is that the Namah Shivaya mantram is the root from which all things come into existence. Namah Shivaya is the fundamental thing. So Gayatri mantram is a manifestation of Namah Shivaya mantram. That's the implication there. And then, he was staying in Sirgadi for a long time, right? So a lot of just as Vedic Pandits came and talked, sometimes the Tamil scholars would have come and and in that time he sang some very wonderful Tamil songs, very Chitra Kavi as they are called. He has one of the things he has sung in that time is that he has sung something called Ekapadam. Ekapadam is where we have a 4-line song where the same line repeats 4 times, but when you separate the words, you will have to separate it suitably so that each line will be separated into different lines when you word separate them. That way the song is, you will see that the song is a very complicated song with wonderful meaning. The 4 lines, after you had applied the sandhi, look the same, but when the sandhi split, they look different and they provide different meanings. So he sang one such padhigam. He may have sung more padhigams of that kind, but we have one available to us. Similarly, he has sung a padhigam called Malai Matru. Malai Matru is palindrome in English. You know what palindrome is, right? When you read from left to right or right to left, it is the same thing. And he has sung a padhigam of palindrome in Tamil. Like that, he has sung many wonderful songs, and we were staying there for some time. And then later on, he went on another pilgrimage trip. So as he was going from Sirgadi, he was going, you can say, like southwest, banks of Kaveri River, going west. So as he came near Tiruchirappalli, there is a place called in today's there's a place called Pachil Acharamam. In today's name for that place is called Tiruvasi. So he goes to the temple, and as he was about to enter the temple, he found a young girl lying there in front of the temple, sort of unconscious girl lying there. He was surprised to see that kind of a scene, and then he looks around and inquires, and the local king comes to him and says that, but she's got this ailment called Muyalagan. Muyalagan is basically it's a kind of a like epilepsy kind of a thing, where she goes into an epileptic fit and then she becomes unconscious and she'll be there in the unconscious state for a long time, then comes back and then again she will go back to the fit and all that. So we have tried all the treatments with our doctors local. I'm waiting for Shiva to bless her so that she is cured of this ailment. So Sambandar takes pity on that girl and he sings a padhigam called Thunivalar Tingal. This is padhigam 1.44, and in that he says, Thunivalar Tingal Thulangi Valanga Chudachadai Sutri Mudithu Panivalar Kolgir Paradam Sura. It goes on and finally he says, Mangai Vada Mayal Saivudo Ivar Manbe. Is this his quality? Is this his greatness that he causes this young girl to be in this kind of a difficult state? Is this his quality? Is this his grace? So sort of he rhetorically asks. And then as soon as he finished the padhigam, that girl is cured of her disease. She gets up and falls at Sambandar's feet. The king falls at his feet. They are all happy. And then Sambandar continues his pilgrimage. And then they go to different sthalams, and finally they come to a sthalam called Tiruchongod. Tiruchongod is near Erode. Those of you who travel by train, if you go from Madras to Coimbatore, the train will go via Salem and Erode and go to Coimbatore. So Erode is near Tirupur, that area. So it's a western part of the modern Tamil Nadu state. And so Tiruchongod is a big hill. It's about, if you want to climb up, it's about 1200 steps. On top of the hill, we have a temple. And both the Shiva Sannidhi and the Subramanian Sannidhi are very famous. The Shiva Nariswara. So on the top of the temple, it is not a Shiva Lingam, it is a Ardhanariswara form. And similarly, there is a Murugan Sannidhi. And both are very famous. And in fact, in today's Tamil Nadu, if you ask anybody, Tiruchongod, they will immediately know about the Murugan temple there. And so he had Sambandar and his entourage, right? Sambandar goes to group entourage, right? They would have people who carry his palanquin, people who do other services. There will be cooks, there will be other devotees, there will be people who will be writing the songs, the musicians, the Tirunilaganda Yarpanar, Matanga Cholamaniyar, the musicians, and there will be palm leaf manuscript writers. Because when Sambandar goes and starts singing, he will go to the temple, he will go stand in front of the Swami Sannidhi and he will start singing. And it will all be extemporaneous songs, right? So he'll be there and the songs will come automatically to him. And the other devotees, there were devotees who were experienced in writing palm leaf manuscripts, singing. That's how these songs were written. Sambandar never wrote it by hand himself. He will sing, others will write as he was singing. And so, what I was going to say, big entourage, maybe 50 people, maybe 100 people. We don't know how many people are going with him, but you can imagine a big group. So they stayed in the Tiruchongod, and then they worshipped the temple there, and then from there they did side trips. Like they would have gone for other temples around that region. Now there is so when they were staying there, one day some devotees came to him from his group. Says, Swami, in our group, many of us are having this fever. We are all, very, we have high fever. We are not able to get up. We are not able to do anything. So that is what is happening to our devotee group here. So Sambandar hears that thing, and then he says, he thinks about it, and he says, it is not uncommon for such fever to be present in this part of the world, in this part of the season. It is normal, but you are all Shiva devotees. It should not affect you. So he sings one padhigam, avvinaikku ivvinai, 1.116. I think we have covered this padhigam. So in that padhigam, he says, avvinaikku ivvinai aamendu sollu mahadariveer, uivinai naadadiruppadum undamakku unamare, கைவினை செய்து என் பிரான் கடல் போற்றுதும் நாம் அடியோம், செய்வினை வந்தமை திருண்ட பெறா திருநீலகண்டம். The whole padhigam will end with, every song will end with the word Tirunilakandam. So this padhigam is known as Tirunilakanda padhigam. And in that opening song, what he says is that, what we experience is the result of our past karma, that we all know. But how do we find the escape from this unpleasant effects, results, right? We have this, we are suffering. That is an effect of past karma. But how do we escape this suffering? What is the means to escape this suffering? We are all Shiva devotees. Let us do service. Let us do Kainkarya, and let us pray and worship Shiva. And if we do that, our past karma will not come and touch us. In the name of Lord Holy Throat, I say. So this is like, they will not touch, I guarantee this. That kind of padhigam is this. And as he, as per his padhigams, he will sing 11 songs. But in this padhigam, we have only 10 songs available. The 7th song has been lost. We don't have that. So as soon as he sang this padhigam, the devotees, I don't know how many of them had fever, but at that instant all the fever went away. Not only the devotees' fever went away, the fever went away from the town itself. Nobody had fever in the town. And that is a kind of Sambandar's special power and special status. Sambandar is Shiva's child, and when Sambandar says, it happens. When Sambandar says something, wants something, it is done. Shiva never refuses what Sambandar asks for. So it is like, if you have you are a dear child of a powerful parent, right? If you are a Bill Gates' son and you want something, you will have it immediately, right? In the sense that there's nothing that will stop. If Bill Gates wants you to have something, you will have it, dear son. That kind of a thing. So Shiva's son is thirugnAna sambandar. So thirugnAna sambandar makes any request, it is done immediately. We saw that in the the Tirupachalacharamam, right? The girl's epileptic fit went away immediately. Like that here, he sings, and immediately the fever of all the devotees went away. So we are at the end of the hour. So I think we can stop here for today's session, and we will continue from this point onwards in the next session. So if you have any comments or questions, we can discuss. If not, we will conclude here.
No.